The guy threw a punch right at the front of the lottery ticket, wiping out the last half of the last name, and swapping 2 digits of the phone number. That way, the bank teller had no way of tracking down the original owner using the info on file. See, the 3 of them had picked this ticket up off the street, but to get their hands on that 5 million, they had to pass an identity check first. The teller caught on fast. None of the 3 knew where the ticket was purchased, and the name on the back didn't match any of them. They hadn't even gotten their story straight beforehand, and they were seconds away from getting completely exposed. Jasuk managed to talk his way through it with some shaky excuses, but all it would take was one phone call to the number on the ticket, and they'd be done. The teller even threatened to call the cops if the story didn't check out. The second that call went through, everyone's hearts jumped straight into their throats. At the last possible moment, Jasuk summoned his stand and quietly altered the info on the ticket.
実はですね、木下さん。あなたの宝くじが。木下？俺は森下だけど。
His teammates were completely blown away by how fast he thought on his feet. Just like that, they walked out with the check. But Shigechi immediately tried to keep all 5 million for himself, tossing them a measly 20,000 yen like it was charity. Okuyasu didn't say a word. He just punched him in the face and took the check back. Jasuk stepped in and reminded him, a deal is a deal. They'd hold on to the check for now, and once it cleared in 3 days, Shigechi would get his 5 million. Just thinking about getting 5 million each had Jasuk and Okuyasu straight up crying tears of joy. But that smile disappeared a second later. Completely blinded by greed, Shigechi flipped on them. He unleashed his stand, stabbed Okuyasu in the leg, and snatched the check back. Then he had the nerve to start making death threats. Just as Okuyasu geared up to fight back, his calves suddenly started itching like crazy. He looked down and saw Harvest, Shigechi's stand, crawling all over him and biting chunks out. Taking out a few of the bugs did absolutely nothing to Shigechi himself. Then he turned and bolted. But with that round build of his, the guys caught up pretty quick. Out of nowhere, Shigechi dropped to the ground and had his stand drag him forward at high speed, scaling a building in no time. Jasuk and Okuyasu used their own stands to launch themselves up after him. But what they didn't know was that Harvest had already unscrewed every bolt on the pipe they landed on. They dropped instantly. Luckily, they managed to fix the pipe in time and shot right back up into Shigechi's face. Jasuk ordered him to hand over the check, but suddenly their vision went blurry and they both collapsed. Turns out Harvest had stolen a bottle of liquor and injected it straight into their bloodstreams. That method hits way harder than actually drinking it. Okuyasu was furious and tried to throw a punch, but ended up taking one straight to the eye instead. Jasuk was in no shape to heal him and caught the exact same hit right after. Then, out of nowhere, Okuyasu suddenly broke down crying, threw all his cash on the ground, and begged Shigechi on his knees to let them go. Jasuk saw exactly what he was doing. Shigechi got suspicious and kept his distance, but he'd already stepped right into striking range without realizing it. Okuyasu activated his ability, and the check instantly snapped back into Jasuk's hands. Shigechi wasn't worried. He figured he'd just take it right back, but the next second, Jasuk tore the check to pieces and let them scatter in the wind. Without his stand's ability to restore things, those scraps were nothing but worthless paper. Shigechi panicked, frantically directing his stand to chase down every falling piece. He fell completely for Jasuk's distraction, leaving himself wide open for the 2 of them to beat him down properly. After taking that well-deserved beating, Shigechi finally had a change of heart. Splitting it 3 ways was the only fair call. And so, after all that scheming and effort, Shigechi successfully negotiated his share from 5 million yen down to 66 million. A boy sprayed white paint on his head and drew a scar across his face, all to look like Black Jack, so he could treat Kong's little sister. Not long before this, Kong's sister had come down with a severe case of tuberculosis. They searched everywhere for a doctor, but no one could cure her. After hearing stories about the legendary Black Jack, she begged her brother to somehow bring him in to treat her, but their family had absolutely no way of affording his fees. Even so, Kong promised his sister he would make it happen. As her condition kept getting worse, the clinic doctor urged them to check into a hospital for surgery right away, but she refused, insisting she would only be treated by Black Jack. When Kong heard all of this, he sat by the lake feeling completely lost, replaying his sister's words in his head. In the end, he made up his mind. He was going to find Black Jack no matter what. He tracked down a former patient of Black Jack's, who told him the surgery had cost 100 million yen. To Kong, that number was completely out of reach, but he had made a promise to his sister, so he kept asking around, trying to figure out what Black Jack even looked like. The problem was, almost nobody had ever seen him in person. Just when Kong was completely out of ideas, he happened to walk past the drama club one day, and spotted Kid rehearsing for a play. That's when it hit him. Without hesitating, he walked straight over and dropped to his knees in front of Kid, begging him to dress up as Black Jack and comfort his sister. Kid was moved by how deeply Kong cared for her, and agreed to help. They got themselves dressed up, and quietly snuck into the hospital. Kong introduced Kid to his sister with complete seriousness, telling her this was the real Black Jack. Kid played the part, gave her a made-up examination, and told her confidently that her condition wasn't serious at all, and that the doctors would take good care of her. She believed every word. From then on, they visited her at the hospital regularly, always in disguise, hoping to bring her a little peace of mind, but deep down they knew this couldn't go on forever. One day, his sister started having doubts. Kid kept telling her she was getting better, but the hospital doctors were saying she had reached the point where surgery was unavoidable. Kid panicked. He had no idea how to perform surgery. Right as the whole thing was about to fall apart, the real Black Jack appeared behind them. As it turned out, his sister's attending doctor had gone to college with Black Jack. After hearing how much this girl admired him, he personally reached out and invited Black Jack to come. Black Jack agreed to perform the surgery, but named his price at 100 million yen. Kong went pale and frantically promised to pay it back somehow. Then Black Jack caught everyone off guard, saying he'd actually do it for just 1,000 yen. Not long after, the surgery went perfectly. Every last bit of the girl's illness was gone. With his last breath, the old man placed a gold coin in his mouth. Then with every last bit of strength he had, he bit down as hard as he could. There's a legend that says, if a dying person holds a gold piece in their mouth, a mysterious organization will come to collect the body. They examine the bite mark left on the coin. The deeper the impression, the stronger the grudge the person carried in life. That's how they decide whether or not to carry out the revenge. The geisha lying before them was one such client. She served over 100 men every single day. Her heart weighed down with bitterness and humiliation, and it was all because of the man she had married. He tricked her out of every penny her family had, then sold her to a brothel, turning her into his personal cash cow. It wasn't until the very end that she finally understood. The whole thing had been a setup, carefully planned by her husband and the brothel owner from the start. To get her revenge, she traded every coin she had ever earned for that single gold piece. In her final moments, she hoped that someone would help her fulfill her last wish. Meanwhile, her husband had no idea any of this was happening. He was enjoying his wine without a care in the world. Suddenly, the door flew open. The man nearly jumped out of his skin. The brothel owner rushed in and told him that someone was coming to kill him. If he wanted to live, he needed to get out right now. The husband hesitated, but the steel giant standing behind him didn't wait. He grabbed the man and dragged him out by force. The two of them scrambled onto a small boat, desperately trying to flee the city. What they didn't know was that the organization's hitman had already locked onto his target. He drew back an enormous bow, took off his glasses, and loaded a custom-made arrow. With a single kick, he snapped a roof beam clean in half, then took aim at the distant targets. The next second, his clothes exploded off his body from the sheer force. Both men crashed into the river. The steel giant didn't even have time to react. He was dead before he hit the water. The husband thrashed around desperately, swimming with everything he had toward the shore. Just when he thought he was finally safe, another hitman stepped out of the shadows. The man didn't even have time to react before he was cut down with a single strike. On the other side of town, the brothel owner was suddenly called out by a young woman. One look at her face, and he was completely drawn in, but he had no idea that danger was closing in with every passing second. A hidden assassin kissed a golden handkerchief, then pressed it firmly over the owner's face. The curse took hold instantly. Before he could even cry out for help, he struggled for a moment, then dropped to the ground. The assassin slowly opened his coat, revealing a tattoo of the Virgin Mary across his back. He was here to hear confession for every soul stained with sin. This is a kitchen knife worth $1 billion, just from the force of falling. It can slice clean through half a meter of solid concrete, and it hasn't even been sharpened yet. Knives like this are scattered all over the display racks. The man behind them all is the legendary master bladesmith, Melk. But when Toriko laid eyes on the frail man standing in front of him, he just couldn't believe this was the real deal. So to find out for sure, Toriko deliberately got in his face and challenged him to a fight. Melk didn't hold back. He pulled out his famous blade, a knife forged from the teeth of a capture level 55 megalodon. The moment it flashed through the air, a deep gash split open across the ground. That got Toriko fired up. He charged in barehanded. Melk swung the blade. Toriko answered with a hand knife strike, cutting right through Melk's sword energy and leaving a deep crack in the legendary blade itself. Then Melk casually ran the blade across his shoe. Just like that, the edge was completely restored. Toriko's jaw dropped. Melk followed up with his ultimate move, and it barely managed to slice through Toriko's shirt. Toriko seized the moment and slammed Melk to the ground. That's when Komatsu rushed in and jumped between them. It was only then that Melk realized the man he'd been fighting was Toriko, the strongest of the 4 heavenly kings. Once things settled down, Melk came clean. He wasn't the real Melk at all. He was just his apprentice. The true Melk had vanished 2.5 years ago, searching for a legendary whetstone. Ever since then, the apprentice had been handling all the forging himself. With the misunderstanding cleared up, Komatsu finally got to the point. He asked if Melk could forge him a new kitchen knife, but when he found out the earliest appointment was 3 years away, his face just sank. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out his broken knife. The apprentice was completely stunned. He couldn't believe how much care Komatsu had put into that knife. He made a promise. If Toriko could track down the legendary whetstone, he would forge Komatsu a brand new knife. Toriko didn't even hesitate. He was in. He headed straight for the most dangerous place on Earth, the Death Falls. The gravity here is 50 times stronger than on the surface. Every single step felt like moving through wet concrete. The pressure was so intense that all the blood in Toriko's body was being forced down into his legs. If he kept going like this, he'd be crushed flat. Then a rolling boulder gave him an idea. He curled his body into a ball and started rolling downhill like a bowling ball. But right at that moment, Komatsu's kitchen knife slipped out of his pocket. Toriko lunged forward and grabbed for it with everything he had. He caught the knife, but the momentum sent him tumbling over the edge. When he looked up, he realized he had landed right in the middle of a ruby crab nest. These crabs were packed with nutrients. Toriko didn't think twice. He started eating. The meat melted the second it hit his tongue, rich and sweet, and he just could not stop. Right in the middle of his feast, a massive minotaurus came lumbering toward him, but it didn't attack. Instead, it froze and slowly started backing away in pure terror. Toriko was confused. He turned around. A towering man had appeared behind him, completely without a sound. The man simply raised one finger, and the monster went dead silent. Then the man said something in the faintest whisper. The beast reacted like it had just received an order, and took off without looking back. This was the real Melk, the legendary master bladesmith himself. The only problem was, Melk's voice was so soft that Toriko couldn't make out a single word. Melk started gesturing, trying to communicate, while Toriko stood there completely lost. The minotaurus suddenly came trotting back, carrying an amplifier stone in its hands. Melk told Toriko to follow him to his workshop. They didn't have to go far before they reached a cave. The walls were lined with the most extraordinary kitchen knives Toriko had ever seen. He was absolutely speechless.